Wolfe, currently an assistant professor in the Price College of Business at the University of Oklahoma. What initially got me interested in the topic, really of sort of stress and health and well-being, stems from sort of my background initially, which was more from the physical sciences. I was a biochemist before I came back to entrepreneurship, and combining that with some of the literature that deals with sort of stress and entrepreneurship and self-employment. And what we really find is the discrepancy between some findings. Potentially seeing some papers that suggest that entrepreneurship is very stressful and it's not maybe necessarily good for well-being, whereas other recent papers have found evidence that says actually entrepreneurs feel pretty good. They have more self-control and more autonomy, and so therefore they actually have lower levels of stress in their jobs. And so that was really a core motivation to say not necessarily which one's right or wrong, but really take a step back and say, well, is there something that could be maybe motivating both? And so from that perspective, we thought bringing in more of a physiological biology approach might get a way to find some new light and gain some perspective on how these sort of seemingly contradictory results might actually be representative of what's going on in the process. So what we actually did and what we found relates to sort of bringing a concept from physiology and health sciences called allostatic load. And allostatic load is really, as it's sort of operationalized, it's a composite index of really health indicators that are manifestations of stress within individuals. And so everything from blood pressure to cholesterol to body mass composition, which all have been found to be manifestations of what physiology calls allostatic load, or basically the body's physical response to stress and stressors. And the reason why we thought that would be interesting is because a lot of the previous research on stress has dealt with really subjective perceptions of stress. So we use survey measures, which is fantastic. And so how do you feel about your job? Does it make you stressed? Do you perceive that it's something that has a lot of stressors involved with it? Which is great for capturing one aspect of the phenomenon. Unfortunately, what it doesn't necessarily get to is sort of other aspects or manifestations of stress that could have a physiological response that those surveys don't necessarily tap into. So what we wanted to find physiologically, we respond to things like, I feel like I might be threatened, or I feel very challenged. Those are both stressors. They have different connotations though, but physiologically they still elicit responses that could be potentially detrimental to our health. And so what we want to do is to take this and use these physical measures, these health measures, physiological measures, to maybe gain a better insight into what the actual association between people who are self-employed or entrepreneurial and what their body responds to. And interestingly enough, what we find is that we do find a positive association between what we call allostatic load, which is the physical manifestation of increased stress, and individuals who are self-employed versus those who are not self-employed. Which is not to say that's bad, it's to say that we have more stress. Because one of the other things we actually find is we look at sort of coping mechanisms. So the next question would be, well, if I'm feeling stressed, how can I get rid of it? How can I deal with it? How can I mitigate it? And we actually find that for individuals who use higher levels of what we call problem-focused coping, that relationship between being self-employed and higher allostatic load tends to be mitigated quite a bit or substantially. And so the takeaway being, it may be more stressful, but there are ways to get around that. So we hope to open up some more dialogue and sort of how we can look at this from that perspective. Practically, what I would say is that stress isn't necessarily always bad. It's a motivator. It's not maybe negative to feel stress. That being said, what we have found is that through our research that problem-focused coping strategies, so as opposed to emotion-focused coping strategies. So emotion-focused coping would be, I want to deal with the emotions that I feel because of the stress. Our research suggests that those might not be as beneficial to reduce the types of stress that entrepreneurs might face. Whereas problem-focused coping, which is to say, what is the cause of the stressor? How can I address the cause of the stressor and either reduce or eliminate that? We find in our research actually is beneficial. So the long and the short would be face your challenges, find the things within your career, within your life that are causing these things, and employ strategies to help reduce or eliminate them. It's probably the best strategy to take. It's not going to eliminate stress, but it will help you cope with it and deal with it and hopefully channel it into positive aspects.